Okay, at 6 p.m. we'll begin. Good evening and welcome to the NYCHA Monitor Federal Community Meeting. We would like to, I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm having trouble seeing everything. Okay, good evening and welcome. My name is Asha Muldrow from the NYCHA Federal Monitor team. We'd like to welcome everyone this evening. Thank you so much for being with us. This is the community meeting for Staten Island, and also to address the heat issues that the NYCHA Monitor team is looking at NYCHA. So for this evening, we will hear from Dan Burnell, who's the Deputy Monitor, who's also the head of the heat team. He'll give us an update on some trends analysis, as well as suggestions and tips from both the NYCHA Monitor team and the fire department. And you will also hear from guests from CCOP, the Citywide Council of Presidents, Lilith Lozano, and if she will be able to join us this evening, Shakina Butler, who represents Staten Island on the Monitor's Community Advisory Committee, the CAC. And then after we hear from those representatives, we will open up the microphone to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This evening, the residents from Staten Island are our VIPs. So we will ask all residents if you'd like to make a comment or question or let us know anything. We ask you to queue up and let us know in the chat where your development is, what development you're from, and if you'd like to speak. And then we will move you over to the guest panel so that you can be seen on screen if you so choose. Or if you prefer for your question or comment to be read by one of our hosts, we will do that for you. And we will save most of the hour hearing from you, our audience. And then after we hear from those who would like to speak from Staten Island, we will open the floor because we know that there are representatives and residents from all over the city representing the Bronx, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Queens, and Manhattan. So we invite all of you to please indicate in the chat feature that you would like to speak, and we will listen and hold microphones time for all of you that we're able to get to this evening. Please forgive me. This evening, I'm a little off. I'm just recovering from Omicron. I know that it's just been such a horrible spike in the city. We're all just touched by it. So many people are getting sick, losing their lives. So please, everyone, stay safe. Forgive me and my voice this evening. And before I begin, though, I would like to take a moment of silence to recognize those that perished in the tragic fire in the Bronx this weekend. So I know we're all heartbroken by that tragedy, and let's remember all of them as we gather this evening and their loved ones and families. So with that, I will turn over to the Deputy Monitor, Dan Burnell.
Thanks, Asha. Thanks very much, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Given that I don't think the temperature got over 20 degrees today, this is probably a really good day to talk about heat issues, particularly at NYCHA, where so much of the equipment is old and outdated, like many of the buildings themselves, so that NYCHA really needs to do all it can to keep the equipment running. I want to introduce two people that really run our heat team. One is Vincent McCrae, and maybe he would even go on video, and Chris Davids, who are going to be answering questions and speaking as well. So, and just kind of one of there's Vincent. So he looks like he's in a NYCHA building, actually. So one of the things that we're focusing on with the heat department, HMSD, is working to improve their off-season preventive maintenance. It may be kind of funny to talk about that when we're right in the middle of the heating season, close to mid-January. But Vincent, who I said is on our team, who worked at NYCHA for well over 25 years, quite a bit of time in the heat department. The thing that he always says is you kind of have to get back to basics, and you kind of set the course and success of your heating season in the summer when you're actually working to perform maintenance and repairs on the equipment so that it's ready for the year. So one of the things that NYCHA has been working on and is to update their standard operating procedure for all their heating procedures, both in terms of maintenance and care and everything else. We're going to work with them very soon on that, including hopefully creating some additional trainings for staff so that they really understand the procedures and then know what to do in terms of following them. So I'm actually going to ask Chris to introduce himself and talk a little bit about his background, and then the same for Vincent.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Davids. Dan already did a pretty good introduction of myself, but I have a background in construction management. I have also, with that, I've installed many of these boiler systems, not only in NYCHA buildings, but elsewhere as well. Have a background in investigative services and QA and QC of systems.
Thanks. And Vincent, how about you?
Good evening, everyone. My background is in several things. I worked for NYCHA for 25 plus years. I came in NYCHA in 1993 as a trainee and worked my way up to deputy director, which I retired in 2018. I'm also a resident, grew up in Kingsborough houses, born and raised there. And so I know the insides as a resident and also as one others. But my specialty is heating, and I retired as the skilled trades deputy in Manhattan.
Thanks, Vincent. Thanks, Sasha.
Thank you, Dan, for making those introductions. And thank you, Chris and Vincent, for being part of the NYCHA Monitor team looking at heat. We are so lucky to have your vast expertise on these issues. And at this point, I wanted to ask you, Dan, if you'd like to present a presentation with update information, please.
Yeah, so Patricia, if you'd put the, and it won't be very long, just to let people know, because we really actually want to answer your questions and hear your comments, but we do have a couple things on the slide deck.
Before you begin, Dan, as a housekeeping matter, I did want to note that we do have Lindsay with us, our Spanish language interpreter. And if there's anyone that would prefer to be in the Spanish language room, please so indicate in the chat so we could give you instructions to move over.
Thanks, Sasha. So actually the first slide we're going to show doesn't have anything to do with heat, but has to do, again, it's just before the call today, I was watching New York One. They actually had an interview of the father who's had 3 children died, and his wife, obviously really sad and tragic. So anyway, and so this slide is about space heaters. And the information comes from the fire department's website. So if people have those, and again, I know in a lot of the NYCHA developments, there are units that just don't get heat, even if the boilers are working, because the distribution systems are old and are falling apart. So the heat doesn't get to any part of the apartment or doesn't get to certain rooms in the apartment. And of course, it's, under those circumstances, especially in a day like today when it's so cold and the buildings lose heat so much, obviously it's very tempting to get a a space heater, because what else are you going to do? So, you know, obviously going through, again, and as I said, this comes from the fire department's website for people is, you know, one, be sure to keep your space heater at least 3 feet from bedding, curtains, and other materials, obviously, that could catch fire. Avoid using electric space heaters in the bathroom or other areas where they may come in contact with water, obviously, so people don't get shocked or electrocuted. Never use an extension cord with a space heater, and unplug the heater when you leave the room. My understanding is when you use an extension cord, it just really multiplies the risk of some sort of a fire because the cord can't handle that amount of electricity. Purchase a space heater with a thermostat and automatic shutoff, and make sure it includes the Underwriters Laboratories UL mark. The use of kerosene or propane space heaters is illegal in the city, and the use of these types of space heaters pose a high risk of injury or death. I mean, the fumes, don't ever do that. And then the last thing, which doesn't really have to do with the heaters, but has to do, you know, if you're ever in the unfortunate circumstance where you have a fire and you flee from whatever apartment or room you're in, make sure you close the door, because that's, you know, that really makes a big difference in terms of stopping the fire from spreading, or at least it slows it down quite a bit. So that's really important. So anyway, under the unfortunate circumstances of Sunday's fire, we thought it would be a good idea just to include this slide. Why don't we go to the next slide, Patricia? So, and I actually have to move. There we go. So from the perspective, and I'm going to ask, actually, Vincent, if you could, Vincent, can you see this? It looks like you're in the car.
Yeah,
Can you?
see it.
Yeah,
I can see it.
Vincent, since you've actually done this stuff, why don't you kind of go through this for everybody?
Okay. Excuse me, throat a little sore. Role of nitrous heat department to provide heat. They, turn this phone on. So you have the summer preventive maintenance. That is when the heating department does most of their work. If they do a maintenance, that will show during the winter time. And another thing they should focus on is maintaining their distribution system. What that means is maintaining the equipment down in tank rooms. The distribution system is down in your tank rooms with the vacuum tank, your condensate pumps, that type of equipment. Maintenance and repairs, I can't see something right there. Maintenance and repairs during heating season. So during heating season, they should be doing preventive maintenance all year round. Checking the tank room equipment, checking the boiler rooms. According to their standard procedure, they do the tank rooms twice a week. And what we're going to recommend from the monitorship is doing it daily. You need to check your equipment every day. And responding to resident apartment complaints. Those complaints are the ones we're talking about, where you have heat in your living room, you have heat in your kitchen, but you don't have heat in your bedrooms. So when you're making a work order with no heat or not enough heat, please include the room or the rooms specific to where there is no heat coming through your radiators or convectors. So that's it for that slide.
Before you move on, Vincent,
Yeah.
I know you've been going around to the different developments and checking the boiler rooms and checking to see if they're actually doing all these things that they're supposed to be doing. So did they do the summer preventive maintenance work?
We lost
Do a
Joshua.
good job this month.
I'm sorry, did I
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
we lost you. We lost your audio for a couple minutes.
Sorry, Vincent, I was just wondering, I know you're going around and checking up on the work that NYCHA is doing. Did they do the necessary summer preventive maintenance work? And are they doing the necessary repairs now that heating season is away?
Vincent, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Okay, I think we might both be having connection issues. Maybe Dan.
And the tank room equipment from, I don't know if it's me as well.
Now
you
we
hear
can
me?
now we can hear you, Vincent.
Okay. So I'm gonna start over. They didn't do a good job in their preventive maintenance program. The monitorship is writing up a report on the preventive maintenance program that they did this summer. They didn't do well on their boilers. They need a lot of welding. They still have some boilers still down from their summer overhaul preventive program. And for the past month or so, started checking their tank rooms. Their tank rooms aren't in too bad of a shape, but they have a lot of issues in the tank room as well with their leaking pumps. The vacuum tank motors leaking. Not too many, but from the ones that I checked, they have shows that they didn't do a good job also in the tank rooms. And I visited a couple of residents from heat complaints that I checked with the BMS system, this new system that they have. The system says that there's heat in their apartment, which is reading 76 degrees. But when I go into the back rooms, there's no heat in the back rooms. So I go check the equipment downstairs and realize that there's a bad trap that they should have picked up during summer overhaul, but I have them come out, change it, and when I checked the residents' radiators, most of the radiators were in the off position. So I opened up their radiator, the valves are closed in the off position, so you're not gonna get heat to your radiator if they're in the closed position. So to know that your radiator valves are in the open position, you must turn the radiator knob to the left, to your left arm, turn it to the left. If you turn it to the right, you're closing it. If you turn it to the left, you're opening it. So just make sure your radiator valves are open, and that's the way that you'll know that if the radiators start getting hot, that they're providing enough heat. So those are things that I found during my inspections.
Okay. Thanks, Vincent. Do you want to go to the next slide, Patricia? So this has to do with the resident's role, and actually Vincent already mentioned a couple things. One is when if you're not getting heat, and of course the best way to tell whether you're getting heat or not is to either touch the radiator or touch the riser. And if it's cold, then obviously you're not getting heat. Now, and again, I'm not an expert here, but I do know under the BMS system, the electronic sensor system, the main purpose of those sensors is to control the boilers. So one thing that residents should be aware of, and I know the heat department has been telling this to people whenever they can, is that having the BMS system installed will really help stop overheating in the buildings, which I know is a big problem, because what it'll do, it'll shut the boilers off when the temperatures in the units, and they're not in every unit in the buildings where they're installed, but I think probably about 30 to 35% of the units. So you're not going to be getting, even in a day like today where it's so cold, you probably, you're not, it's not pumping heat to the apartments, 24 hours a day. So just because the riser is cold at some point doesn't mean that you're not getting any, that the heat is somehow not, malfunctioning. And of course, as Vincent said, the other thing to make sure is when you call in the heat complaint, and you have an issue, particularly for some reason, it seems to be in bedrooms, I guess, because they're kind of more exterior than living rooms and kitchens, to indicate that on the work order, because then that helps who's ever responding to focus on the area where there's the biggest problem. And then things like, making sure windows aren't open, or even open a crack so you're getting drafts, because again, on a day like today, it's really hard to heat an apartment if a window's open, even just a crack, because so much of the warm air will escape.
Dan,
Yeah.
before you go on, we're getting a couple of questions in the chat. You mentioned this BMS system. Can you
Right.
what that is, please?
Yeah, now I'm trying to remember what the hell it means.
You want me to take it?
Yes, because you probably know the answer.
So BMS stands for Building Management
That's right.
System. What that means is it's a way to control the heat throughout the entire building. There has been, and I don't know, not all developments have it yet, and not all apartments have it yet. Basically, what it does is they install temperature sensors in a certain percentage of apartments, and based on the temperatures that those sensors read, it'll either turn on or turn off the boilers. It's a more efficient way of heating the building. It also takes care of potentially overheating certain apartments. I know there are complaints about overheating the apartments as well. If you don't have a BMS system, what the way you operate the boilers is based on the outdoor temperature, and the outdoor temperature doesn't really give a good view of what's actually going on inside the building. So that's what it is. It's a way to turn on and off the boilers to provide efficient heating.
Thanks, Chris. Any other questions? I can't see the chat. Any other questions, Asha, there that you think we ought to answer now?
Asha, good evening,
Yes.
everybody. It's Chris Lozano from CCOP. I'm interested because Vincent said a couple of things, and congrats, Vincent, from all your experience to be able to address the concerns of the residents. But we're having a lot of boiler issues, and I've been tirelessly telling NYCHA that prior to them when we have inclement weather, that we need to have a separate department to be able to make an assessment. One of the things that I'm interested in, Vincent, if maybe you could elaborate, is we all know that during budget restraints, we don't have the funding source to repair most of the boilers. When they started installing some of the boilers in the mid-90s that I recollect around the city, including in the development I reside, we were close to the millennium. And I mentioned to them that I thought it was a bad idea to install the boilers that they were putting in place because we were going to have these issues. Is there some way that in some of the boilers that are having excessive heating issues and water pressure, maybe they can make an assessment cost effective with using burners in some of the developments? I don't know the other logistics of it. I've gotten a 101 on boilers, but I know because we can't get new boilers and most of them are obsolete around the city, because it seems like apparently the team that comes out, they do Band-Aids on these developments boilers, and they're still having the same issues. One, can we get just a separate department with your expertise, of course, to go to the developments? Because according to the meeting that CCOP had with Daniel Sherrod, he indicated that he only identified 10 top developments, 1 in Queens, 4 in Brooklyn, 4 in the Bronx. I didn't hear too much about Staten Island, which concerns me. because Staten Island in the past has always felt, and I'm sure that some of them will come out and say and agree with me, that they feel like they're the lost borough. And we don't want that to happen. CCAP doesn't want that to happen. So is there some way we can look at that? Because I mentioned to Sherrod that, you know, we would like to see a separate unit go and make an assessment. And that during the summer months that it's required and mandated by the responsibility on the NYCHA to look into the developments so we don't have to deal with that. Just as well as the unfortunate fire in Twin Parks.
Okay, Vince,
Bad
did
stuff.
someone
yeah.
address that concern?
So you do have a separate unit with NYCHA. They're called the EHS unit, the heat unit. They're a separate department from HMSD heating. But the issue isn't the boilers, right? Even when you put in new boilers. So the problem is that they're putting in new equipment, new tank rooms, well, new vacuum tanks, new motors, new pumps, new boilers, but they're doing nothing with the distribution system. And that's a major problem.
That's what I'm saying, Vincent. Is there some way, because most of the developments around the city are having that same problem. And I'm just saying that because we can't get new boilers because of budget or whatever. One of the education that I got from one of the HPTs was maybe we need to look at in some of the developments, burners that said some type of circulation. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, that would cause better ventilation, boost up the pressure for the heat and the hot water. Is there some way, because keep spending and band-aiding the boilers and then they got to keep coming the same team. It's not really cost effective economically or effectively for the residents of public housing.
So, you know, one thing is the way that they operate is the boilers provide steam. So, right, you have 5 boilers at your location. All 5 boilers are running. All 5 boilers are operational. You have something inside the boiler room that's called a condensate tank, which is treated water that feeds the boilers, right? Which is warm water. You don't have to put cold raw water into the boilers. And then the boilers send the steam out to the buildings. The buildings have something what you call as a zone valve. The zone valve opens up, sends the steam up to the buildings, but the piping that it goes through, the steam goes through, is old as the building. So the piping in the buildings cannot withstand the pressure. So you're certain developments, you're gonna have a lot of leaks. And some of the developments, you can make the repair, because if you take care and go back to the basic and do the traps in the summer, make sure your vacuum tank is tight in the summer, and you clean the mud legs in the summer, 95% of the time, the residents won't have heat issues in the apartments. But like I said, some of the piping is real bad to where that as soon as you fix this leak, it's going to leak somewhere else because it's going to go to the weakest point. Those buildings need to be looked at, and the distribution system needs to be a priority instead of all the boilers being priorities. Because you could put a brand new boiler today, and if you don't do anything with the distribution system, that brand new boiler is going to look 30 years old in about three to 4 years. So that's something that we're looking at to push NYCHA to include the distribution system with the new boilers and the new tanks.
So Lilith, I know that you asked a question with regard to Staten Island. And I also know that before this evening's meeting, Vincent actually looked up some of the data from Staten Island. So Vincent, as long as we got you on, do you want to share
Yes.
what the information has been so far this heating season for Staten Island?
So Staten Island, since October 1st up to today, I ran the outage report. Staten Island has only had 2 developments that had a outage. That was Stapleton and Mariners Harbor. The last outage for Stapleton was November 3rd. They haven't had an outage since. And this was a planned outage. And the last outage for Mariners Harbor, which was only one outage, was December 14th, which was a planned outage, which means that they shut the plant to make a repair to something that, probably had an issue that they made the repair. And there has been no other outage in Staten Island since December 14th, only those two developments. And Staten Island have the most seasoned staff, HPTs, burner mechanics. So they did a great preventive maintenance work, because you can see from the outages that we received during October 1st to the date. So Queens and Staten Island staff does a great job. It's the other boroughs where we're seeing a lot of issues.
Now, Vincent, what is making Staten Island's boiler system? Because I'm hearing they're very, very old, but they seem to be timeless and priceless. Those boilers are being functioned or maintained a certain way that it's not doing the same in other boroughs. What's going on? What makes it so much more effective? I'm just curious.
It's the staffing level, the experienced staff in Staten Island, like your HPTs in Staten Island been there 20, 30 years. Your burner mechanics been there 20, 30 years. So they know the ins and outs of their boiler rooms and their tank rooms. And the other boroughs, they got, new staff that hasn't properly been trained. Training is a main issue in the other boroughs. But Staten Island and Queens have veteran staff that knows how to do their summer overhaul, that knows how to prepare their boilers during the summer. And you just got great staff in Staten Island and Queens.
Okay, before we move on from the slide, I just really want to highlight that the reason why we come to have these community meetings is because we really need all of you, the residents, key stakeholders around the city, to be the eyes and ears. And let us know what you're seeing, what you're hearing, what you're experiencing. So please, make sure if you have a heat issue, call it into the CCC, because we're monitoring those concerns. Use your My NYCHA app. And if you feel like NYCHA is not responding, please also let us know. We read all the emails that come into the monitor's email and website, or you could call us. Whatever you need to do to keep us informed, we really appreciate all of you. We're really grateful for you joining this meeting from Staten Island and all over the city, because you are the eyes and ears. So we know what NYCHA is telling us. We know what we see when Vincent and Chris are out doing some of the inspections, but we can't be everywhere all the time. So we really appreciate all of you being the eyes and ears. It's critical.
Yeah, and Asha, just to underscore what you said, the very first call, if you think you're not getting any heat and you should be getting heat, the very first call you should make is to the CCC, because for one thing, nobody will show up unless you make a complaint to NYCHA. And you're welcome to, send leave a voicemail on the monitor website. My suggestion is that, only do that if nobody's responding, or if the response you feel is inappropriate or ineffective by NYCHA, then you're always welcome to, leave a voicemail with us and we'll respond. But as I said, first and foremost, make sure that you're calling the CCC and lodging a complaint.
And then tonight, the focus of this meeting is to talk about big systemic issues, development-wide issues. But if you have individual concerns with your particular unit and you're not getting heat, or you have other egregious issues, make sure you're calling the CCC, and then you can also let us know directly. Okay, so with that, next slide, please.
I'm sorry, I had my hand up.
Is that Ms. Harris?
Oh, good.
Stop.
Good, Dr. Harris, thank you. I'm glad you were able to join. Please proceed.
I had my hand up. And I'm from Staten Island, by the way, Cassidy Lafayette houses. We have in general, I shouldn't say that. In general, we have had good heat people here in Staten Island, and I'm not saying that's not the case. We did have a couple of outs, as you said. But the problem that we're having now, and I could speak for Cassidy and New Lanes, is they installed new vents. And I had one of the engineers tell me, you're gonna have problems with your heating because the vents take the air out, the heat out, and sure enough, that's what's happening. We've had a heat guy, and I know he's been around a long time, and he even told me he has never had this many heat tickets at Cassidy Lafayette since he's been working here. And the air vents, the new air vents apparently pull up, are very, very powerful, and they're pulling the heat out of the apartments. People are buying space heaters. People are running the tops of their stoves and their ovens, and it's definitely an issue.
So, Ms. Harris, these are the ventilation systems that are mainly in the bathrooms? Is that what it is?
Dr. Harris.
I'm sorry, Dr. Harris.
The residents can call me Brenda Harris, but NYCHA has to call me doctor.
That's fine.
So your question?
So when you say the vents, are these mainly the vents in the bathrooms for
Right.
generally for mold purposes?
They installed new roof vents.
Right. Okay. That's what.
And then ever since we've been having heating problems, the apartments are cold.
Okay.
The heat is on, but the apartments are not warm like they should be. I'll give you an example. In order for me to wash my hair this morning in the tub in the kitchen, I had to get up out of bed, put the jets on the stove, and then get back in bed until it got warm.
Yeah. So that's something that NYCHA definitely needs to look into.
And the radiators are working, by the way.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for letting us know. That's the precise kind of systemic issue. It's important to raise up so we could check into that. Thank you so much, Dr. Harris.
Yeah. So, I mean, this slide is a little bit about it. I think between Chris and Vincent, we've kind of talked about the things we do. The third thing we do, and Chris is going to explain this in one of the slides coming up, is we it's really on Chris's team, analyze a lot of the heating data and make reports, both public reports, reports to HUD, reports to the Southern District, the federal prosecutor here in Manhattan and the Bronx, and also to others. And by the way, NYCHA also, in fact, we work with them quite a bit because they have an excellent data analytics team, not only for heat, but for basically every aspect of the services that NYCHA provides. So I think that might be the next slide, Patricia. Why don't you go to that? Yes. So first of all, Patricia, if there is a way to enlarge that, that would be great because it's a little bit hard to read. Very good. And then, Chris, if I could ask you to kind of run through this for people in terms of what the data is indicating.
Yeah, sure. And I'll try and make this as easy to understand as possible. I know there's a lot of lines, a lot of numbers on this. So what we do, and Dan alluded to this already, is we take a look, the monitor takes a look at NYCHA's own data, that they have in their maximum work order system, which is what they use to keep track of their work orders for everything from heat to painting and whatnot. And so we take a look at this and monitor and analyze how NYCHA is doing year over year, or in the case of heat, it's season over season. And so I'll take a look at what's going on here. So if you look at the left-hand side, the top graph, so that graph is the count of work orders, development-wide work orders for heat outages in a given month. And so the lines are color-coded. We started looking at this from the 2019 to 2020 season up until this season. And so what we see from this is we can see how they're trending over each year. So I'm just going to take a look at, just show you guys November. So if you look at November, yep, right there. This is a good one. So if you look at the green line is last year, so the 2020 to 2021 season. And if you notice, it says there are 45 outages across all boroughs for heat. You take a look at this number and you think, wow, NYCHA did really good in 2020, 2021, and they're doing poorly, or worse, I should say, this year and the previous year. The graph on the bottom, all the way at the bottom, will show the average temperatures. We'll go into that in a second. But what we saw is that the average temperature in November of last year happened to be a lot higher. So there wasn't as much heat that needed to be provided, which is why there weren't as much outages. So we take a look at this data, and this is all NYCHA's data. And like Dan said, NYCHA does this as well, to see how they're doing, if they're improving, or where they're not improving. Same thing, the graph below that goes through how long the outage lasted, so the duration of the outage. And on average, they've been around the same. This year has, the durations have been up a little higher than the previous year. And what we take from that information is we dig a little further and try and figure out why. Why did their duration last longer now? Why is it lasting longer? Below that graph is the actual count of resident complaints. So resident complaints is every time somebody calls a CCC for no heat, or lack of heat, or not enough heat, whatever the case may be. And as you can see, so this year in December, and for the month of December, there were 23,000 calls. If you go back up to the graph all the way at the top, there were 81 outages in the month of December. So those 23,000 calls correlate to the 81 outages. Going to the right-hand side of this chart, you'll see basically a list of the top, the worst performers, or the developments that have the most outages, going from greatest to lowest. So we'll just look at the top one, which is Lincoln Houses. Lincoln Houses this year, from October 1st to December 31st, has had 13 outages. The next two numbers, I'm not really going to go into, but the last two are the average outage time. So on average, an outage lasted almost 9 hours at Lincoln Houses. And then the last number is the response time. And this is a big one too. This is how long did it take NYCHA from the time there was an outage called in to the call center to the time they actually started fixing the problem, to the time they showed up and started working. So on average, they showed up about 2.5 hours afterwards to start working on the problem. Down below, there are some other metrics that we look at. We look at how many outages were under 12 hours, how many outages were over 12 hours, and how many outages were over 24 hours. There are not a lot that were over 24 hours. It's very negligible. Most outages, and this is broken down by borough, most outages were in the 12-hour or less than 12-hour period. The yellow indicates where they were above 12 hours. And then on the bottom of this chart, I know there were some questions also about third-party vendors, people who are outside vendors who are working on your boilers, who are maintaining your boilers. So what we take a look at how those third-party vendors how their outage durations are versus NYCHA. Okay? So if you look at count of outages, that pie chart on the bottom, there were 32 outages that were so far this heating season that were at developments that are run by third parties. So the boilers are run and maintained by somebody else besides NYCHA. The bigger slice of the pie is 173 outages where NYCHA is responsible for the maintenance and repair of the boilers and systems. So these are the things that we as the monitor, take a look at and, assess how NYCHA is doing. And with this information, and again, NYCHA uses this also, this can really tell where you have your issues and where to really focus your efforts on. So I think that's about it on this.
Yeah, and just to, I was talking about NYCHA's data analytics. So one of the projects that they took on last year, and hopefully they're going to expand this year, is taking this same data and using it to create a list of the worst performing heating assets so that those assets can be prioritized for replacement. When you have so many boilers and other related heating equipment that's old, you want to make sure you're prioritizing the replacements properly, especially when you clearly don't have enough money to replace everything that should be replaced. So NYCHA is continuing, as I said, to use the data to make those decisions.
Excuse me, I wanted to add that one of the concerns we mentioned, because I'm seeing the list right now and we were discussing it today. You guys, I'm just asking as a recommendation to look at to revisit this, because there's some developments that are going through some things and it's not on this list. The third-party vendors, that's another department that I mentioned to Sherrod today, that they need to thoroughly look at it, because some of these third-party vendors, they do a botch job and they're not as effective. I think maybe we should go back to the fundamentals on getting experienced staffers, maybe the experienced staffers that are in Staten Island with some initiative, maybe their expertise, maybe they can come to the other boroughs as well to want to cut costs so we don't have to endure it and it's universal. It's just a recommendation.
Yeah.
I just want you to update this list because I was very disappointed today. And out of the developments that were named, I only see 4 of them on this list to be one of the top 10. And I know there's others that were worse than these.
So I mean, these statistics are taken right from the data. Not to say that there aren't other developments that have issues. This is what this is created based on the work order counts and work orders that are in the system. We do look at what the third party vendors do versus what NYCHA does. We have been looking at that pretty thoroughly. And we see some of your concerns. Other areas, we see that the third parties are actually doing a little bit better job. If you look at the bottom of this, that pie chart really shows that the third party vendors actually had less outages. But then if you go right to the right of that, the average durations and average response time is actually higher for the third party. So they don't show up as fast and their outages last a little longer. So we do really try and compare the two and see what's working and what's not.
So Asha, I see that there are a lot of questions. Would it make sense to go to the questions?
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. You read my mind, Dan. Why don't we, do you have any other slides that you have to get to?
No, we can go later. There's
Okay.
only a couple. Let's go to questions.
Excellent. Okay, so let's open up for questions. We see a lot of hands going up and comments and questions coming into the queue. We will we'll do two ways. If you're in Staten Island, if you could get in line first, let us know if you're from Staten Island. If you have a question or comment, it could be related to heat since we have our heat team here. But if there's something you want to bring to the monitor's attention that's systemic wide, development wide, let us know. And we'll ask you to please just keep your questions to one question at a time. And you can always queue back up because we'd like to also get to representatives and residents from other parts of the city as well, particularly as it relates to heat issues. And I will note that we have people from the monitors teams taking notes. We're recording this meeting so that we can follow up on the issues you're raising. We also have Eva Trimble from the senior leader at NYCHA from the Office of, who heads up the Office of Strategy and Innovation, listening in so that NYCHA is directly hearing all of your comments and concerns as well. So Ms. Trimble, thank you for joining us. So with that, Floretta, can you please tell us who we have up first?
First, we're going to start with Gloria Wright, who is from Staten Island. And I just want to clarify that with the others are behind her online, we don't have a lot of the Staten Island residents that are raising their hands to speak tonight. So please bring that to our attention that you are a Staten Island resident so we can get you ahead of the line. There are a number of people that have comments that they'd like to voice on tonight. Starting with Gloria. Right.
Okay. Can you hear me? I have a problem talking.
Yeah.
We can hear you.
Manhattan. I'm at 131 St. Nicholas Avenue. I'm part of Taft, but I'm on the west side. We have a problem with the boiler, but not as much because our boiler was just placed about a year or so ago. And I did something that I know I shouldn't have. But the man that brought it in, you know, supposed to be the boss, I asked him for another number. I said, because the number you give everybody here is a number that's on the door. And when the door is locked up, we can't get in touch with you. I want another number. So when we are freezing, I can contact you. It happened right after we got the boiler. Everything, you know, the heat went off, the water was cold, and my residents, I try to go to all the seniors and see what I could do. I would put a pot of water in the oven and keep going and checking on it, make sure that, you know, the apartment is warm. So then I called him. I must tell you, he sent somebody out here fast. He said, somebody is on their way. They'll be there in less than a half an hour. And it was taken care of. But now, like the D line, some of the E line, and the A line are saying they're not getting enough heat. And also, I'm in the B line. With us, we turn the water on. So let's say 3 minutes, the water's hot. When it gets 5 or 6 minutes, water's ice cold. And that we go along with that all the time. He called me the other day and he said, we're gonna try to send somebody out to check on it as soon as possible. Otherwise from that, I don't have that much problems now as we used to have since we got this new boiler. Last year or the year before, I can't remember. But it's pretty good. But when they paint your apartment, why do they always paint the handle that you gotta turn? Because the seniors, I have to go through the building and get some of the young boys to come and turn it because they can't turn it because it's painted. And then some of them put a piece of string. It's not string, it's like wire, and they tie it. We can't turn the heat on at all. We can't turn the thing. And that's bad, you know? Otherwise from that, I get a lot of complaints now, and I tell them, I am not the boiler. I am not NYCHA. Everybody got a phone number here to call. And y'all better start calling because that's the only way we're going to get help. You know, we got enough other problems.
Mhm.
I wish it was only, I don't want to say that, but I do wish it was only the boiler. We have a group of guys that have taken over our building. They break up everything in it, everything. They cuss us out. And I had went to the chief, Shay. I have talked to the head of housing. I got the letters here. Ain't nothing been done. We got people living on the roof. They set the trash compactor on fire almost every day. The fire department, they just know where to go and who did it. I mean, that's the kind of problems I'm having here at 131 St. Nicholas Avenue. It's not good. The other thing I would just like to mention is one thing. The fire we had yesterday, I believe, when all the kids got killed, they were talking about the doors don't close. If you have a carpet in your hallway, and it's that high a little bit, that door is not going to close because I have a carpet in my hallway. I've had the man to cut that part away where the door go back. So in case something do happen, and I push that door back, it will stay back. You know, but a lot of people, they said, oh, that don't make sense. It makes sense. Because if you got a carpet in your hallway and your door has been closing and you put the carpet down, the door is not going to close. If you got a little rug there for people to wipe their foot on, the door is not going to close. I've been sitting up in here all day crying about those kids, you know, and it really hurt my heart.
Mhm.
I have grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. God, no, I don't want nothing to happen to them. And I know how that family feels. Besides that, and my seniors complain, they can't go to the mailbox because these guys sit out there in front of the mailbox. I call the police, they come, they get some of them out, they come right back. If I say anything to them, they try to gang on me in the elevator. So, you know, I just try to bear with them because they've been here now almost a year and a half and they do not move. They break up the cable in the hallway and I told them, man, put a big good lock on there. They don't pay me no attention. The young boys that live in here, they act like they scared them. I say, y'all was born here. Y'all should be saying something to them and keep them out of here. But they won't. I don't blame them because they beat up the police. So I don't know. We don't have a lot of problems, but that is the worst problem. The mailman can't come in. All my bills, everybody bills in here is paying extra money because they sit in front of the mailbox and spit all over the place. Eat their food, throw it down. I mean, every police officer I know has been here. Everybody, every politician I know have been here or tried to come, and they have letters, and I have them. Nothing's being done. I don't know what else to do. I'm 82 years old, but I still raise, you know, HELL because I can't stand it. You know, when we moved in here, I was one of the first people to move in the building after it was built. Most everybody in here moved in when the building was built, and we never had nothing like this. Never. And now every time you look, there's another group coming, and they go to the door and be the doorman. The male woman, she don't come up, period, unless I'm downstairs. You know, and it's getting real bad here. The police,
Yes.
I don't know what to say.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Ms. Wright. We really appreciate you opening up the question and answer period because you raised a lot of important points, including practical things that do with regards to training the painters. It's really important so that you have access to open and close the radiator valve. Safety and security issues are something else that I know NYCHA is working on. The monitor team is looking at too. So thank you for raising those important points. I will ask that our next speakers please limit it to one question or one comment so we could get to as many guests as possible. Hudson, can you tell us who's next?
Yes, Ms. Daner, Eldon is, she has to leave early, so I wanted to get her question in early. Ms. Eldon?
Thank you so much, and good evening, everyone. And thank you for inviting me, seeing that I am from the Bronx. I have so much to say, but I'll say this much, that the zone valves that were needed to make our system equivalent to a working system never came about. They are here, but they're not functioning. There are also issues with the fact that none of it is automated. The system is not automated if they don't leave it on. And right now they just opened up the valve so we can have heat, but that's not the it's supposed to work from my understanding. It's really aggravating at this point. And I got 2 tenants now to have heating tickets, and all day they've been, browbeating my phone, texting me all day long. When is somebody going to do something? I don't know what to tell them anymore. And I'm hoping, Mr. Brownwell, that you make a note of this. I've seen you now for 3 meetings.
Yep.
I hope that you can help me.
Miss Eldon,
get
which
some answers.
development are you from?
I'm from St. Mary's Park Houses
Okay.
in the Bronx.
Yep. No, I know where it is.
Yeah. And I just want a working system that, I won't say this flawless because that's unimaginable for
Just one that
NYCHA.
works.
One that works and that's dependable. Right now I'm in my office with a coat on because I got 2 broken pipes that are streaming water right now. I'm afraid that they're going to burst. And I don't know what to do. I don't know. There's a work order. I put it in the chat section. There's a work order that the super sent downtown to whomever, a few people, and I listed their names. If somebody can get on this before we have a disaster here. The pipe is in apartment 2E in this building, which is also, I also listed. And there's an 80-something-year-old woman in that apartment trying to keep the water up off her floor for the last 3 days. So I'd appreciate if somebody can get to us. I know there's an issue of abatement. I seen a picture of the pipe that the super was kind enough to show me. So the abatement must be done before the pipe is fixed. But if you can help and expedite, this problem, I would greatly be appreciative.
Miss Eldon, the building number where the apartment is 2E, what's that building number?
645.
645, and is it Westchester?
Westchester.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm looking at the water coming down steady now. So I'm going to get out of this office because I think that pipe is going to break. It was just a drip before. Now it's coming down the whole, I wish you could see this. I got buckets. I'm just disgusted right now.
Yeah, no,
And
I
I'm
don't blame you.
fearful.
Yep. And I presume you've called in work. There should be work orders in the system.
Yes,
Yep.
the work order was put in by the super before he left. And I'm hoping that somebody reads it soon, because it's work order 87893253.
Okay.
And it was sent to Kokorek, Mr. Richard Kokorek, and Mohammed Hussein, Bridget Dobson, Agnesia Cabral, Jose Seymour. Those people. I don't know who they are, but he was kind enough to leave me a copy of the email because I told him I have a meeting and I'm going to be in the office. He told me before he left, if water starts coming down like it is now, get out.
Yeah.
But I have equipment and stuff in this room as well.
Sure. And Miss
This is
Eldon,
hot water. This is
yeah,
hot water.
I think we have your phone number. Obviously, I don't want you to tell me.
No problem.
but I think-
347
Okay.
347
Yep.
567 5459.
5459.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm packing up now and I'm going to leave this room. I do have a key. If anybody needs to get in it, fine. I can come down. I'm in a
Stay safe, Miss
wheelchair.
Eldon. We're going to connect with you separately. And we're going to have someone look into this right now. This sounds like.
Ms. Asha, with all due respect, I've heard that before and
Oh.
nobody calls. So I'm going to wait to see what y'all going to do. Because
Okay.
this is major.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
stay safe. Dan, can you have someone from your team follow up ASAP?
Yeah, well, the big thing is, and I know Eva's on the call, to property management needs to respond from NYCHA. And we will as well, but obviously we don't do the repairs.
Dan, it sounds like they need asbestos abatement first.
Say that again, Vincent?
Sound like they need asbestos abatement team there first.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Loretta, who do we have next?
We have Miss Gibson next. Go ahead, Miss Gibson.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Miss Gibson.
Okay, I hope everyone is well, trying to stay warm and stay safe. Okay, question. Okay, well, I'm Eugenia Gibson from Beach 41st Street, the TA president here for Rockaway. We have issues with the heat all the time, not just 2021. We've been having heating issues. We are third party. We have GSH that comes in to take care of our heating problems. They're not from Rockaway. They're from their offices from Jersey, PA, not here when we need them. We have some of the apartments have heat, some of the apartments don't have heat. Last month, we went 3 days with no heat. Hot water was cold. Okay, so as I do, I get out and I call the central office, I call management. So now I'm going to talk to the vendors. So of course, one person put it on the next person, but I do know that NYCHA had their hands kind of tied because being that it's a vendor and a contract, the workers are not supposed to come and touch anything. Okay, the vendors are supposed to touch it. Okay, so now I want to know what's going on. Evidently, somebody don't know what they're doing. Okay, at 11, 12 o'clock, the heat goes off. Okay, 5 o'clock, between 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, the heat comes back on. When it's not, okay, then when the heat is working, when it's not that cold, the apartments is blasting with heat. Like now it's freezing. You can touch the radiator. That's how lightly the heat that we're getting. And I know that it's cold. And sometimes with it being cold, it's you want it a little hotter, but it's not. But the temperature, the heat should be up higher. So one day I go downstairs and I'm complaining to the maintenance workers. And I'm told that when they went in there, that the boilers and stuff was shut completely off. So this was part of the reason why we didn't have heat for 3 days. So who would cut the boilers, cut it off, completely off? So of course, GSH is
You're making a really good point about, what's happening with the third party vendors, and we've been hearing the complaint. This is a systemic concern. Dan, Vincent, what are you guys hearing about that?
It's not good. It's not good. Like now we do have heat, okay, but it's like so lightly. They must have cut the temperature down because you can barely feel the heat coming up. You can barely feel the heat coming up. And the vendor that we have is called GSH.
Yeah, GS Hall.
Okay, not good at all. Not good at all. So a meeting that we had last month with Mr. With some of the head people, Brian Honan and a few of the other big guys up there. And we discussed the heating system. It was an emergency meeting called with Selvina Books and Redfern. So we requesting that the whole Rockaways come as one with the heating team. Why do some of the developments have NYCHA people working and then some of them have a third party? Okay, we're always talking about monies and don't have enough money to do this and enough money to do that. This is waste. Okay, we have a vendor that's coming here and we still in the cold half the time. Okay, if we need them at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, they're not coming from Jersey or PA to come and take care of our heat. Now we gotta wait till the next day when we have
Yeah,
night
you
shift
make
workers.
a really good point, Ms. Gibson. What does NYCHA do when you have the third-party vendors and you have a heating emergency at, like right now, 7 o'clock at night? What happens?
Nothing happens. You gotta wait till the next day. Nothing happens. Nobody comes out. Nobody comes out. I don't see no truck come out.
Well, the way it's supposed to work, if the issue's with the boiler, it's GS Hall that's supposed to come out and do the inspection and make any repairs if there are any needed. If the issues are with the units, then that's HMSD, NYCHA's heat department, that's supposed to respond to that. And in a third-party site, it's really the maintenance workers from the development that are supposed to respond, and that doesn't always work very well, to say the least.
Mm-hmm. And we're
So
suffering for it.
who's supposed to respond if it's an after-hour outage issue?
Well,
Yeah.
again, it depends where the issue is. If it's with the boiler or something in the boiler room, it's GS Hall. It doesn't matter what time of day or what day of the week. If it's an issue in a unit or in the distribution system, then it's supposed to be the development maintenance workers that respond, because this is a third-party site.
Okay, thank you.
But Asha, the other problem is that I just want to emphasize to you, Dan, is that one of the other things is that, the resident leaders, they reside there and they're supposed to be the problem solvers. And sometimes I'm so related that we're hearing that AWS is going to be over. The problem with that is how we're going to get employees when some of them are being fired because they're not being vaccinated. A lot of the resident leaders, they're not getting the respect or the courtesy to get a courtesy call by their property management to say, listen, Ms. Smith, or, so-and-so is going to be on call within the hours. So
Exactly.
then they're left with a skeleton crew. And that's why sometimes I have to call on behalf of those other resident leaders. And I'm saying now that, you know what, if there is a new sheriff in town, which is Mr. Sherrod, and he's from HUD, he said he's going to look into those departments. We need to make sure that they provide a one-on-one, hands-on with the resident leader and its board, because, this skeleton crew of not knowing who's there in situations with floods, with leaks, and the other resident leader from St. Mary's, I already called Mr. Barber to address that. Anybody who's from the Bronx or anywhere else, I shared it with Asha and Floretta and Bart. Send it to me, because I will make it my business. That's what I'm here for, to hear everybody from every borough. Let me know. I will address it and do what I got to do so you guys don't have to deal with the bureaucracy. Please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this important concerns.
Thank you.
Loretta, who do we have next?
Yes, we have Crystal Glover next. Ms. Glover, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Feliz Navidad. Shalom. Happy Merry Christmas. I'm sorry. Happy Kwanzaa. I know time is real limited, but we just got off of a very important holiday. Some of us have been renewed in our faith when we was ready to give up. We've been renewed. And I want to thank Jeremy Riddle, who is a member of Bethany Church, who did the song Joy to the World. It reinstated my faith. So thank God for that. I'm gonna try to be quick. Okay, this is an update. Last meeting, first of all, let me thank the monitoring team. Thank you guys for having this meeting. I thank God that I'm on your mailing list, or else I wouldn't even know about what's going on. So I thank you that I'm on the mailing list. Thank you for your work. Okay, so I'm here in Manhattan. I'm in Washington Houses. And the heat that we're getting reminds me of the Three Bears. You know how you had the porridge was too hot, too cold, or just right? Our heat is just right. Our heat.
Don't jinx it.
No, I won't, because I don't believe in jinxing. I don't believe in jinxes and mantras and all those kind of things here. I'm me. And so the heat is just right. And so I want to thank whatever heating team they got here. It's
Yeah,
really,
that's
really,
HMSD.
yeah, it feels really, really good. Normally I have to crack a window because you can't breathe because things are not adjusted properly. But I
So,
can
Ms.
act-
Glover, I'm just curious, do you have, if you know, does your building have those electronic sensors that we spoke about earlier on the call tonight?
Are you talking about the nodules that they put in about 5 years ago? I don't know about any electronic sensors, but I know we have nodules they put in that supposedly give readings down in the basement for every
Yeah,
apartment.
so that sounds like that.
Okay. The other
So-
thing I wanted to,
No, that sounds like, yes, then you do.
Okay. I want to give an update for Dan Green, who's not here tonight. He was at the other meeting, you know, the one you had last year.
Right.
And the fact that I was able to talk to him because he took a picture of the petition I put together because, as you remember, I'm gonna be quick, so don't get frustrated. As you remember, my water in my bathroom was bloop, 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 right? Since June 8th. And Dan came to a meeting, he took a picture of the petition and promised me the star on the moon. Nothing happened. So I was able to see him at last month's meeting and let him know that he didn't do his job. I'm sorry, he didn't do because he's from the compliance. Dan Green is the compliance person, one of them anyway. So after talking to him at that meeting, that next day, bam, bam, bam on my door. They came in. Not only did they fix the water pressure, but they put in new pipes. The water is flowing. Thankfully for the brother and the Latino brother that came and did the work. They cleaning up what the other guys came and didn't do. So I'm going to give the black man and the Puerto Rican a shout out. Okay, what's the other thing I wanted to say? So from June 8th, the water's ploop, ploop, ploop. I don't know how many tenants that signed the petition, water got fixed. I can only vouch for my own, but I know the water is perfect now. The temperature is perfect. All they have to do now is complete the wall. The last thing I wanted to say is 1905 here at Washington Houses, their compactor, I noticed it's becoming a trickling effect that they're closing up these compactors. I don't know what that's all about. But 1905, someone needs to get over there quickly. They got maggots flying in the hallway. Their compactor has been down for about 3 months now. And some tenant, possibly, because it could have been a work before, we know, took the nail out of the hopper and started feeding the hopper. So now you got flies flying all over the place. They actually have fly traps, fly stickies, what do they call them? On the 7th floor, where my friend who's very ill lives on that floor. Okay.
So when you say 1905, that's a building number?
Yes, sir. That's 1905. That's building 4.
But 1905, what avenue or street?
Oh, 1905 2nd Avenue.
Okay.
That's building 4 at Washington Houses.
Okay.
Last thing I want to say, my friends at Lehman have no heat. That's the bad news of my speech. They have no heat. Lehman Houses, I think it's like 4 buildings, between Park and Madison. They have no heat. And I have a friend over there that's ill. He has no heat, and he's in Lehman Village. So once again, thanks again. Thank you, Dan Green. You'll see the tape. You'll get the invoice or whatever. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ms. Glover, for those updates and raising those important concerns. We appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Ms. Hudson, who's next?
Mr. Ball is next. Go ahead, Mr. Ball. You'll have to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Ball.
All right, good evening, everybody. We have the heating sensors that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
They are not doing all that great here.
What development?
St. Nicholas Houses, Manhattan.
Okay.
I still get some complaints about, it's not as many as they were, but I still get complaints from people the apartments are cold, but it's reading something else on the sensor. And then you have the sensor saying something. People are turning on their stoves to heat the apartment, but then the sensor's picking up the stove being heated and they're gathering that info along with it when there's no heat. Like I said,
Okay.
it's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still there.
Okay.
The other thing is this: we have a water pressure and hot water problem because I'm getting complaints from people in 200 West 131 and 225 West 129, you know, and 230 about no hot water. And since heat and hot water are connected, we're still having the same issue with some of that. I'm also getting people with certain parts of their apartments are getting heat and other parts aren't.
Okay.
So that's an ongoing theme with certain things. Overall, heating has gotten better, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna sit here and say it hasn't. But some things, it still is a work in progress, folks.
Okay.
All right. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us those important notes. Loretta, do you have any other guests that would like to speak?
Yes, we're going to have Manny Martinez. I know he raised some issues. Mr. Martinez, do you want to present a question or a comment?
Mr. Martinez,
Yes.
thank you for being here. We appreciate you as our CAC representative from Queens. Please proceed.
Yes, good evening. Excuse me. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year to all. I have a quick question about the statistics that you showed. It said 117 outages, but 40,000 complaints. How is that feasible?
So why don't I go, who was, Vincent, were you?
No,
Chris was gonna, go ahead, Chris, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I can answer that. So
Sure.
the 117 outages is the actual development-wide outage. So to put it in sort of simple terms, if you have a development that has, let's just say 1,300 apartments, and the boiler shut off, means that there's no heat to the entire development, all 1,300 apartments. You may very well have 1,300 people calling the call center saying that there's no heat, but there's only one out. There's actually one outage. It's one development outage. So that's where the numbers, it may look off, but it's accurate. You potentially have thousands or hundreds or 1,000 calls to each one outage.
So an outage is only considered an outage if it's development wide. If a line has an outage or a specific apartment, that's not considered an outage. That seems concerning.
It's a development, a building, or a stair hall is considered an outage.
A development, a building, or a stair hall, but that number is only specific to developments. So you've isolated stair halls.
No. So that 117 is outages, whether it's a development wide, whether it's a building, one or two buildings, or a single building, or a stair hall.
Now, that doesn't mean that, if you're having an issue with the heat in your apartment, let's say the radiator's malfunctioning or something, that also isn't supposed to be responded to. It's just a different term.
But it's not being counted.
No, it is counted. That's counted as part of the complaint. It's just not an outage.
Well, see, but now that's problematic because now it seems that we're keeping numbers low for night shift.
So sorry, Dan. So the 40,000 complaints is only the complaints that are tied to an outage that I just spoke about. It's not individual apartment complaints.
So that 40,000 complaints, 117 outages is based on development wide, and that is acceptable.
Like I said, development, building, or stair hall. Yeah.
Right. So, okay. Now the other, I have another thing. These sensors that they're putting in, these regulators, they're putting in regulators onto the boiler systems, and they're not putting up the sensors, and we have no heat or very low heat in certain areas. I think NYCHA is abusing the New York City regulations of certain temperatures, keeping temperatures at certain levels throughout the city during the day and then at night, and they are excessively restricting heat behind that. We need to better monitor that. We have seniors and disabled people, as you know, many families with children that are not receiving sufficient heat, and that's not being, and it's being overlooked. Also, because time is running out, Carlton Manor, and I've sent out an email, Carlton Manor is a development in Far Rockaway, and none of the apartments have hot water. And that has been the issue for 55 days. We need immediate attention to that issue. Thank you so much, and Happy New Year to all.
Thank you, Manny. Make a lot of important points, as well as highlighting urgent issues that I hope NYCHA has taken, because I'm sure those 55 days, that sounds horrible. Thank you for highlighting that. And but you made another good point that I was wondering if someone from the team could talk about, and that's insufficient heat issue. We haven't really talked about that this evening. Can someone address that?
You broke up a little, Asha. The what issue?
Insufficient heat. Like they're getting heat, but it's just.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm gonna, I mean, Vincent, of course, can speak for himself, but, you know, related to the sensors that Mr. Martinez was just talking about, as I said, first of all, they don't have them in every unit. And also, my understanding is there's usually only one per apartment where they are installed, and they usually just installed in the living room. And again, you know, from stories that I've heard from Vincent, where, you know, the sensor may be registering something like, you know, 70 degrees or 71 degrees, and that's fine. And that's, you know, in the living room where the sensor is. But you go into, let's say, a bedroom or a room, you know, separate from where the sensor is, which has a different set of risers. And if there's a distribution problem in that riser, it doesn't matter what the temperature in the living room is. You know, the temperature in a bedroom or whatever, you know, might be, you know, completely much colder, especially if the riser isn't functioning at all and that room is, you know, getting no heat whatsoever. On a day like today, that's going to be a huge difference in temperature.
And let me just add real fast to further explain these sensors. The sensors don't control the temperature in each individual apartment. First of all, they're not installed in every apartment. They're installed in, you know, roughly 30% of apartments within a development. Those sensors work together to come up with an average temperature of the entire building, which then turns on and off the boilers. So that's not to say that there are apartments that may be cold or may not be getting enough heat. It goes off an average. You know, the apartments don't have, you know, can't control themselves, you know, heat wise.
So no, and I understand that the sensors have not been added, period. Right, in the places where they have to be, but they have regulated the boilers, and they aren't. The sensors have not been to the capacity that you're speaking of, that have not been installed, and I think that is having an impact. And so we have to look at the vendors too, as well as them being complete in their process and how they're engaging in their responsibilities. They're not, you know, they're being, forgive the term, they're being half-witted and not being fully responsible to what the expectation is. And that's problematic. Also, one thing that I've noticed as well, I've gotten a lot of callbacks, right? Especially again with the New York City temperature regulations. So 55 degrees, and it would be 54, and they would tell the person, well, you have to wait one more degree before we could do something. That is heavy-handed. right? That is NYCHA being abusive or leaning heavily on these laws and forgetting that we are people. We have to engage that better.
Yeah.
Really important points. Thank you so much, Mr. Martinez. We are at the end of our 90 minutes, but I just wanted to make sure we didn't have anyone else in queue. Ms. Hudson, is there anyone else waiting?
No, we're at the end, Asha.
Okay, well, thank you all very much for raising such important points and bringing these issues to our attention. Heat issues is freezing out, so top of mind for everyone. And of course, I have to get this right. So as the monitor team, we're gonna stay on them. And we really appreciate you all because you're the eyes and ears. So thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for keeping in touch with us. We will have our next CAC meeting that will be live streamed on Tuesday, February 8th. And those meetings, we have officials from varying cities, agencies, as well as representatives from each borough. And we talk about precisely how do we find solutions for the issues that you're bringing to our attention. So we really try to elevate the resident issues and talk about how we could come up with some tangible solutions. So thank you for keeping us informed. Please join us next on February 8th for the live stream and keep in touch with us. Email us, go to our website, call us, and let us know what you're seeing, experiencing, and feeling. And most importantly, everyone, please stay safe. Dan, as a deputy monitor, would you like to close us out, please?
No, Asha, I just want to thank everybody. I think these are really useful conversations. I know that it can, I know it can be very frustrating, especially when you get the sense that just nobody's responding. But hang in there, we'll do what we can to work with people. And again, I know, and I think people know this, that there's also an awful lot of good people at NYCHA. They're always trying to do the same. So let's keep working together to make things better.
And there's a point in the chat. It's where's Bart Schwartz, our fearless leader. He's here still running things on a day-to-day basis for our team. We have a team of expertise. And today we wanted to focus on heat issues since it's January and it's freezing. So we wanted to bring to you the leaders on the monitor team focused on heat. And we will endeavor to try to have someone who's a team leader on each of the important pillar areas to have these conversations, who can really take the issues back to NYCHA and help them as it relates to all of the issues. As you know, we deal with heat issues, mold, lead, pest, waste. We're looking at the transformation plan. We're looking at elevators. So please keep in touch with us. Thank you so much. Thank you to our monitor team for putting this together, and thank all of you for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Asha.
Thank you, Asha. Have a good night.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you,
everybody.
Asha. Have a great night. Happy New Year's to all.
Happy New Year.